poni poni hikina, mai ka pina ka wakala. O mai la ko mala mala mai ka honua nei ka mauliola. Ua o Hawai'i ke olino nei, mai ka pina ka velona kala. Ka hiko iai ka ike mano mano, ka ike koliko mai o ke kilo mai, o ka uno ia o ka pulama, a pa'a maka ipu o ka ike. Ai, ai, wow, He mele no Hawai'i wow. If you know this chant, na au makua, please join in. Na au makua mai ka la hiki a ka la kau, mai ka ho'oku i a ka halawai. Na au makua ia ka hinakua, ia ka hinalo, ia ka a kau i ka lani. O ki ha i ka lani, o e i ka lani, nunulu i ka lani, ka holo i ka lani. Eia nā pula pula o ko Hawai'i. E mālama o ko ia mākou. E ulu i ka lani, e ulu i ka honua, e ulu i ka pai aina o Hawai'i nei. E ho mai ka ike, e ho mai ka ikaika, e ho mai ka ike. Hiaka mai, e ho mai ka maopopo pono, e ho mai ka ike pāpālua, e ho mai ka mana. Now, Omakua is a mele pale, a chant that we use to ask our kupuna, our ancestors, to guide us as we come together as a collective, and that we ask that we all have positive energy and that we undertake the task at hand and our kuleana at hand. We're going to also do e ho mai, if you know it, please. And if you all can we e kuiluna kako, please stand. E ho mai is a chant written by Auntie Edith Kanakaole. And we ask that our kupuna be with us, our ancestors, and to help us and to guide us with knowledge and wisdom as we gather here today for this meeting. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e au. O nā mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e au. O nā mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e au. O nā mele. E ho mai. E ho mai. E ho mai e. Mahalo.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Layla, and this is Brooklyn, and this is Crystal, and we are just a few of the contributors at Kūpa'a Pono. We want to thank you all for coming tonight and showing support for the community. Kūpa'a Pono is a nonprofit, community-led group, and our aim is to unite and to empower our community to protect and preserve our land and our culture. Tonight, we will be addressing the proposed luxury development at Turtle Bay. We have some incredible guest speakers for you here tonight, all of whom are integral members within our community.
Just a couple things. We have an art table in the back for the kids if they'd like to participate in that. We also have in this corner some Pomalu press. Thank you to Karen for Oh, you can't hear. Okay, sorry. We have the art table in the back for the kids if they want to participate in some drawing. We also have a resource packet with Pomalu Press, thanks to Karen. And we have a petition going around that will, it will be a letter for the DPP for city officials if you want to participate and support that way, as well as a petition in the corner over here. Thank you so much for participating.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke. We just want to thank you for your guys' patience. Thank you for all being here, taking time out of your day, your night. And we want to introduce our most vibrant, young conservationists. Will everybody please give a warm welcome to Mahina?
Mai ka pi'ina a ka la, puka I ha'e, ai ka velona a ka la I lehua, aloha mai kākou. Aloha. O wau o Mahina, ka onohi ka me a hele au I ke kula kaya puni o ha'ula a noha au ma Kahuku. I attend Ha'ula Elementary and I live in Kahuku. Today I stand before all of you to share my mana'o on Arete Collective and the building of 100 units at Turtle Bay. My na'au felt heavy and my pu'uwai dropped as I imagined large trucks, diggers, and cement being poured over our precious aina. This land is sacred. It is alive. It holds the mana and stories of our kupuna. What would they say if they saw this? Heva ke ia mau hana. Developing near the ocean doesn't just harm the land, it affects our kai and all the life within it. Honu, Ia, and the Hawaiian monk seals. Our indigenous wildlife, the animals that call this home will leave or worse, mock it. This is not just about the aina or the animals, it's about our culture, our way of life as Kanaka Maoli and non-Kanaka. As non-Kanaka, it is sacred. It's our kuleana that call this place home to Malama the Aina to protect what is sacred, not just for us, but for future generations. So I stand here today to say enough Arete. A'ole to Arete Collective. I want to be able to go to the beach, swim, fish, do protocol, only if I wanted to. E olu olu. Please, with a humble heart, I ask you all, let us all come together to protect what is Pono and preserve what we have left. E Kūpa'a Kuilima e malama I ka aina. Aloha aina! Aloha aina! Aloha aina! Aloha aina! Aloha aina! Aloha aina! Mahalo.
Our first guest speaker will be Jessica dos Santos.
Aloha. It's so hard to go after Mahina. Everybody, this is my kumu right here. I follow her. Aloha. As we're getting our presentation set up, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jessica dos Santos, a lifelong resident of Kahuku, and been fighting to keep the country for about 19 years now. And I wanted to recognize my board members here, Kūpa'a Kuilima, Michelle, Melissa Ka'onohi Commit, Ramsey Kalimlim, and Lily Makaila, and many others who are in this room as well, who are behind the scenes helping us and supporting us and guiding us. Thank you to all the kupuna who have led the way before and who I follow as well. Couldn't have done this without you guys. So Kūpa'a Kuilima. We are a newly formed community group on the North Shore of Oahu that responded to the concerns about rapid development at Turtle Bay, the abrupt announcements. We are advocating for genuine community engagement and respect for cultural values. And we developed our vision and mission at a AHA on site. And it was a beautiful time, and hopefully you guys agree with us in our core values. Just to let you folks know, we will be sharing this presentation with folks publicly. So I'm going to be summarizing a lot of the information on these slides, and I'm going to have to go kind of quickly. So just don't feel bad if I'm going too fast. You will be given all this information. So Turtle Bay spans 7 ahupua'a o Pana, Kawela, Hanaka'oi, O'io, Ulupehupehu, Punala'u, and Kahuku. It was opened in 1972, and the most recent owner was Blackstone. We're going to be referring to Blackstone as BRE in this presentation. So, how come we no more one Waikiki in Turtle Bay right now? A big reason why is because in 2005, when Kuilima Resort Company applied for subdivision approval, Unite Here Local 5, Keep the North Shore Country, and the Sierra Club argued that DPP should require a supplemental environmental impact statement. And they sued the DPP for not requiring an SEIS. In 2010, after 5 years of litigation, the Hawaii Supreme Court agreed and ruled that an SEIS was needed. And DPP they then went on to draft a SEIS. In 2013, DPP accepted that SEIS. And then there was a second court case. So the same groups mentioned above challenged that SEIS, arguing that it was inadequate. And this is the same SEIS they are working with right now. As a result of the litigation, there were a series of settlements and agreements. A big thing that we can celebrate and thank those groups for is that it reduced the units to 725 from over 3,000. So there would have been a second Waikiki if it wasn't for this litigation. And so it's broken up into 100 resort residential units for RR3 and 625 units for H1 and H2, which are Hotel 1 and Hotel 2. So the lawsuit there were simultaneous negotiations going on between the lawsuit settlements and the conservation easement agreements. As part of the settlement, Keep the North Shore Country and or the Trust for Public Land were given the option to acquire a conservation easement over RR3, but that option expired in 2017. Unfortunately, there was nobody who could step up to pay the $35 to $39 million price tag. It was just too high. And that was after so many years of really hard fighting, hundreds and hundreds of people fighting for a really long time. And, sometimes it's inaccurately touted as a quid pro quo agreement by the developers and others. But advocates always intended to place H1, H2, and RR3 into conservation, reflecting the community's long-standing wishes. It's what we always wanted. So just a quick overview of the conservation easement agreements. 665 acres of the Makai lands, 4 miles of coastline, 468 acres of Mauka lands are now forever preserved. So we can give a big mahalo to those groups for doing that. Unfortunately, BRE insisted on retaining the development rights to the core, including H1, H2, and RR3. There was also a separate settlement for Unite Here Local 5, and this only applies to H1 and H2. And this was so that they could ensure more jobs would come out of any future development. And so this settlement required 30% must be full service hotel units, 20% can be non-hotel units, short-term rentals, and the rest can be hotel units with fewer services. And there's a question that remains if this overrides previous requirements under the unilateral agreement of 51%, saying that 51% had to be full service hotel units. Also, unfortunately, the developers insisted that there be restrictions on opposition. So anyone associated with Keep the North Shore Country, Sierra Club, past, present, and future are bound to not interfere or oppose the development. Local 5 union employees are also bound to not support or otherwise participate in any way, any efforts to stop, delay, limit, or otherwise impede the development. Also, Kuilima West and East homeowners has a similar gag order. So these organizations had to sacrifice their freedoms to oppose Turtle Bay development in order to reach the conservation easement agreement that they were able to achieve. Because the developers insisted that the group sign these no opposition provisions. And that's why they're not fighting today. In 2020, the Ko'olauloa Sustainable Communities Plan was being developed, and it was passed by the City Council under Bill 79 of CD1 2020. If you look at the technical records, there is evidence that many people, including the working groups and hundreds of residents, opposed Turtle Bay's expansion plans and the inclusion of that language in the Ko'olauloa Sustainable Communities Plan. So does the version of the Ko'olauloa Sustainable Communities Plan passed by the City Council reflect how most of our community feels today? In 2022, February of 2022, the Turtle Bay attorneys asked the DPP if they needed a new SCIS or a new SMA. And a couple months later, in July, the DPP director, Dean Uchida, unilaterally decided no new SCIS or SMA permit was needed, solely based on the smaller project compared to the original plan. That determination was officially published in the environmental notice. BRE and DPP provided no notice to the community of any of this. In December of 2022, BRE applied for phase 1 permits of RR3. BRE did not provide any notice to the community. In May of 2024, there was a sudden announcement of 2 new developers that purchased land at Turtle Bay Resort. The first new owner is Host Hotels and Resorts. They own the majority of Turtle Bay and H1. So the parent company is Host, the manager is Marriott, and the brand is now the Ritz-Carlton. The second owner is Arete Collective, and they were previously involved in the designing for RR3. And when Blackstone opted not to develop, they decided to purchase. So who is Arete Collective from Utah? Well, Civil Beat recently published an interesting article that let the community know that key leaders of Arete were part of a different company called Discovery Land Company, including their CEO, Rebecca Buchan. The Discovery Land Company were involved in multiple lawsuits and global scrutiny for damaging ecosystems in Barbuda, Mexico, and the Bahamas, which brings up very deep concerns about how this development will impact coastal erosion, endangered species, and water quality here. Now, the article described their involvement in Discovery Land Company as a long history of blatant disregard for local populations, rules, and environmental impacts. And the stakes are really high because we're talking about one of the last remaining coastal strand habitats on Oahu that have a lot of endangered, threatened, and protected species and native species. There are 13 listed here. I'm not going to read all of them, but if you are able to go out there and see the magnificence of these beautiful creatures that have called this place home for way longer than us, you would understand we need to protect them. In particular, 2 new developments came about after this SCIS. One of them is the reintroduction of the moli. The moli are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. They first successfully nested at Kahuku Point in 2018, 5 years after the last SEIS was completed. Since then, the number of nests have increased each year, and this season there were 32 nests in the area. And moli need areas with few obstructions like buildings, limited human activity, predators to survive. This map here shows all of those 32 nesting sites all over the area of development. In addition to that, something new that popped up is the Nalomeli Maoli. These are the Hawaii group of native bees. In 2016, 7 of Hawaii's 60 species of yellow-faced bees were added to the endangered species list. And these are important pollinators for a variety of coastal strand plants and are believed to have co-evolved with the Oahu. So we really need the bees. Arete has 5 projects, 5 sites. Number 1, RR3, 20 condo buildings, 5 units each, equaling 100 units. Number 2 is H2 Hotel with 250 units. And there are questions about these units. How are they being defined? Will they split these units into multiple units and call them 250? We're not sure. They're also developing Kuilima East Connecting Road, a comfort station near the East Main Drain, and they also lease and operate the golf courses. So this is the current development information. Phase 1 is 4 buildings, including 20 units, the road, and the comfort station. So pre-construction did begin in June of 2024. Their current approved permits are geotech grading, grubbing, and dust fence. Their pending permits, which are not currently approved yet, are the vertical building permits of phase 1, the road, the comfort station. And unfortunately, those permits could issue at any time. And so if you take a look at the map, you'll see the 4 buildings. You'll see the green line is the green construction dust fence, if any of you have been out there. And you'll see buildings 1 is back here, and then 2, 3, and 4. 4 is closest to the beach that we all cherish and love. This is a larger map of the whole entire RR3. So interestingly enough, the website says 20 buildings, but this image has 19 buildings. So we're just working with the best information that is given to us publicly. And you'll see that where they're situated is all back towards Kahuku Point, where all of our endangered species are coming back to life. These are schematics of the road and the East Main Drain. So you'll see that there is a plan to connect through an easement the existing road up to near H2 area, which is that yellow, darker yellow, past East Main Drain, up to RR3, which is the sort of green-yellow towards the right. And then you'll see the schematic of the purple line on the bottom is where the road will be, and then a parking structure and a path going out to the ocean near East Main Drain. So this is the conservation map. And so you'll see that at the point, you'll see the current hotel in the middle. And then to the right, you'll see where H1, where hosts can possibly build a hotel. To the right of the existing hotel, you'll see H2, East Main Drain, RR3, all the way up to Kahuku Point. And then you'll see the light green is all the area where that has been conserved. Here are some building details. So the setbacks will be between 150 and 350 feet from the shoreline. Buildings 3 and 4 may be in the 150 to 300 feet setback area. Now, according to the unilateral agreement, all structures shall generally be set back a minimum of 300 feet inland from the certified shoreline. And this criteria was set in 1986 before we're dealing with sea level rise. Houses are falling into the ocean. Kamehameha Highway is falling into the ocean. The heights may be anywhere between 56 to 90 feet in the RR3 area. They will be using a dedicated wastewater management system already developed Mauka of Kamehameha Highway. And each of the 100 condos will be between 3,000 to 6,000 square feet luxury condo units that may cost between $6 and $8 million. RR3 marketing has begun, and they're labeling it as the North Shore Club. Arete just released new marketing information for RR3. These are renderings from those websites of 2 buildings near our beloved beach and their bathroom. And the website describes the units as exclusive and asks buyers to make the North Shore home. These are images from that website that tout bespoke concierge services to make the North Shore home. These images help us to understand the height of the buildings. So if you look, you can see the shoreline and how high above the shoreline they want these buildings to be. So the supplemental environmental impact statement is required if new information or major changes occur to reevaluate the impacts and look at ways to reduce those impacts. So again, the most current SEIS is from 2013. That is the one that was challenged in court as being inadequate. A special management area is a coastal zone designed to protect and preserve natural resources, and that's where a special permit is needed. Now, coming with the SMA is a unilateral agreement, and these are a set of rules designed to protect public health, safety, and the well-being. And it states also the developer's legal responsibilities to the community. The 1986 unilateral agreement changed the land use designation from an agricultural district to an urban district. It is a legally binding document, and it includes these 14 areas of community obligations. So particularly interesting is the requirement for affordable housing. The requirement is 10% of the resort residential, which is 10 affordable housing units. There are a lot of questions and unresolved things regarding the unilateral agreement. In particular, there are supposed to be 4 parks. 2 parks are, one is by Kavela side and one is literally at Kahuku Point, where it is a critical habitat for our endangered species. Very, very sensitive areas. And so we do not want a park there. In particular, the highway mitigation information from 1986, we have a lot of questions about that, obviously. If you live on the North Shore, you know. And also the design, the setbacks with sea level rise occurring. So the unilateral agreement is really vague. It's really outdated. It does not address current community needs. It does not reflect modern priorities. And the community should have a stronger voice in the unilateral agreement implementation and any updates. Transparency and community involvement is also important. So here's a record of open forums. So in the August 2024 meeting, no open forum for community members was provided. Kahuku Community Association invited Arete multiple times and they canceled. They did attend the Ko'olauloa Neighborhood Board in a special meeting and a general meeting, and also proceeded to invite a lot of their employees to speak in favor of their plans. The North Shore Neighborhood Board, Arete canceled those, that presentation. And there's a long history of community sentiment, right? Back in 2006, we collected 5,000 signatures and gave that to the mayor with Defend Oahu Coalition. There was another petition that garnered 8,252 signatures to protect the coastal habitats. 100% of the respondents to our small informal Google survey said that they did not want new hotels and they support a pause. Both Kahuku Community Association and Sunset Beach Community Association have voted to support our petition, and our petition currently has 3,000 signatures. So everybody, if you never signed the petition, please sign and have 10 of your friends and family sign too. Our petition concerns, I've already outlined a lot of them this evening. You know, we are left without a voice in the future of our community. A lot of the agreements are outdated. We need to protect our iwi kupuna and our coastal habitats and endangered species. In particular, increased development without updated traffic mitigation strategies exacerbates already critical congestion and safety risks for our residents and visitors alike. In addition, affordable housing is not being addressed, and the community impacts need to be thought of in holistic terms. There are cumulative impacts to gentrification that occurs with developments like this. It'll put really unneeded additional strain on our already overburdened emergency response systems, healthcare facilities, public education, essential community resources, with the type of population increase that this would entail. Our petition is asking for the Department of Planning and Permitting to withdraw the 2022 determination and instead initiate the process for an updated SEIS and SMA. In addition, we are asking that a representative Ko'olauloa North Shore group be convened to renegotiate a community benefits package and update the 1986 unilateral agreement. In addition to that, we want to make sure that this whole process is in compliance with the Kūpa'a framework analysis, which is designed to safeguard Native Hawaiian cultural and traditional practices. And we're asking that any and all development activities and or the issuance of permits at Turtle Bay Resort should be paused until the above processes are completed. We need to stand united, everybody. We need to do it together. All of us need to step up. This is our call to action. These are the bare minimum of things that we should all be doing. We all should send our letters into using our handy dandy toolkit, letter writing toolkit, and then sign the letters that Keep Hawai'i Pono have here tonight. We need to sign the petition and share the petition. There's a community feedback form off of our Linktree. Put your road signs up. Everybody put road signs up. Show them what our community wants and doesn't want. And we have road signs in the back. Everybody free, take whatever you want. There is going to also be a North Shore Neighborhood Board meeting on the 28th next week in person. Show up and let the board know how you want them to vote. In addition, stay tuned regarding the Ko'olauloa Neighborhood Board meeting in February. And if we're on the agenda, show up. Let that board know how you want them to vote. And stay tuned for more. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Councilmember Matt Weyer.
Aloha, everyone. Mahalo for coming out. I'm kind of tall. Can you guys still hear me if I'm... Okay, perfect. And I can't really add much to the process than Jessica just did. And I know we'll be hearing from some more folks that go more into the background of the settlement agreement. Okay, how's that? Okay. Mahalo, Senator. Also would like to mahalo Senator Kurt Favela for being here. Could I get a round of applause? Okay, perfect. So I'll just kind of pick up where we left off. So I think everyone being here tonight, I think, is a testament to how important this issue is to the community, and I would encourage you to sign the petition, as Jessica mentioned, and continue to convey how important it is, right? Because the position I'm in, coming into office in 2023, we engaged with the prior landowner, the RE, and I think at that point, nobody knew what was gonna happen. And then we all kind of found out that Host was gonna be purchasing a portion of the property, and Arate, which is the developer right now that we've been talking about that's gonna be doing the housing, was purchasing a portion of the property. And so initiating our conversations with DPP, I think their initial, and I'd say quasi-current perspective is that the purchasing of that property included what's called the entitlements that Jessica talked about. And so as we go forward and look at the EIS and the SMA, our last conversation with DPP was that they are evaluating whether another SMA would be appropriate and would be needed. And so I think your input in this process is really relevant, and particularly encouraging DPP to evaluate that. And through that, that would bring it back to the City Council and provide another opportunity for you to testify and engage. And so for us, and I've had conversations with the developers, and I've expressed my expectation of everyone, just as it is for our community of them, is that they comply with the law. And so that will be the standard that we hold them to, and that's going to be our expectation. You know, we have had DPP send inspectors out for the work that was going on. And again, I think that that's important as well, to convey anything you see going on in the community to us and also to DPP. Because if it's something that, you know, you don't know what's going on, you have questions about, we're here to provide that conduit and ensure that there's an investigation and a review until we get to the point that I think a lot of folks in the community are asking for. We've talked about the unilateral agreement, and I think what's important, and the reason I think that the group that's been suggested be created is it can provide feedback if we get to a point where we're able to reopen it and evaluate all the different criteria and projects that are in there, and also what the development is going to look like, or could look like, or should look like, or shouldn't look like. And so in that sense, I'd ask you to stay engaged and look for opportunities to testify and provide that feedback. And I was told I could provide a few other updates as well. So I'll give you an example. So right now we're dealing with the landfill situation. I'm sure everyone's heard about it by now. And we're at a point where Board of Water Supply has laid out their position that they've rejected the location, and they gave the environmental services, until January 16th to provide their appeal. And they didn't do that, based on my understanding. But they also expressed that they have a different interpretation of the law. And so the point that we're at in terms of Resolution 25003 that we introduced or co-introduced with Councilmember Cordero, who's the council member that represents Red Hill, would just be reaffirming the longstanding city policy that landfills shouldn't be placed over our drinking water, which seems common sense. And so that's an opportunity for you to testify. Next Wednesday, it's at City Council. And so welcome testimony on that. Also wanted to provide an update on Sharks Cove. From what we've heard from Managing Director today was that they did receive a response letter from the landowner. Didn't signal which in particular landowner or entity or whether it was a representative, but that they were interested in having conversations about the particular property. So that's hopeful. And I share that as good news, but just as we've had the conversation before, because I think with a lot of issues, it's easy for us, even for me, to think that it's over, but oftentimes they're not. And so just want to mahalo you and say, stay engaged on that, stay engaged on this, just like every issue. And so I'll be here. You can email me, mwire@honolulu.gov. I have Chelsea here from our office as well. Just want to apologize in advance. I'm going to run to Milani Neighborhood Board in a few minutes to talk about the landfill, but happy to connect offline. Come to our office, we can meet in the community. And just mahalo again for everyone that put this meeting together. And yeah, and thank you for coming out.
And now we would like to welcome, I'm going to leave this up here because he's tall. Now we'd like to welcome Jamie Gove. Thank you.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I'm going to move a little bit closer because I got to run the slideshow at the same time. All right. Right, so for today's presentation, I'm going to talk about the status of nearshore ecosystems at Turtle Bay. But before I do, just want to provide a brief introduction of myself and how I'm here presenting to you today. So I live in Pupukea with my wife, my 2-year-old daughter, and my wife's parents. And I moved to Hawaii in 2001 for a job in focusing on coral reef restoration and conservation. And since over the last 24 years, I've continued to focus in ocean sciences. I got a master's and a PhD in oceanography from the University of Hawaii. And I still work, or I worked then and I work now for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, or NOAA. And so the reason why all that's relevant is that, I'm here presenting to you as a community member, someone who loves and cares about the community and as well as the environment. And my background is really why I'm here, but I'm not representing the federal government. And the reason that is so I can actually provide my personal opinions and thoughts and emotions about this development, about this area, as opposed to representing NOAA. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about a few things. I only have about 10 to 12 minutes, so this is going to be pretty high level and pretty fast paced. But I'm going to focus on coral reefs, the Hawaiian grease sea turtle, Hawaiian monk seal, and sea level rise. And where appropriate, actually, I'm mostly going to talk about the state of the science now and what we know now. And I'll compare that to historical information largely presented in the supplemental environmental impact statement that has been referenced quite a lot already. So I'm going to begin the presentation on coral reefs. And just a couple of just important points about reefs. The first one is the reefs only occupy 0.1% of the ocean seafloor, but they support nearly a quarter of all marine species in the ocean. So they have really an outsized influence on ocean ecosystems and marine ecosystem health. Here in Hawaii, we have a really high degree of endemism. So what that means is that a quarter of all species in Hawaii that are reef associated occur nowhere else on this planet. And that's really important for two reasons. It means they have evolved to fulfill really important functional roles in the ecosystem, but also means if we lose them, we can't replace them. And so we too lose those important functional roles and cultural connections. And so coral reefs also provide coastal protection. They break up storms and waves. They provide sustenance and livelihoods through fisheries and other means. And obviously, they also provide important cultural practices and connections with people here in Hawaii. So how we study reefs is actually important. Is because there's been some recent advances, technological advances, that allow us to basically map reefs from an airplane, basically using a laser. The laser can go through the ocean and actually pinpoint exactly what is on the reef, whether it's a coral or an algae or a rock. And so why that's relevant is what that allows us to do is map the entire island at really high resolution. So this is a map of Oahu. Reds are higher coral cover, blues are lower coral cover. And in fact, the Hawaiian Islands is the only archipelago or the only island chain that has been mapped at this resolution in the world. So we're actually really special to have such a good data set. And so now I'm going to focus in on, obviously, the area that we're all talking about tonight. So I'm going to show a series of maps that really extend from Kawela Bay out to Kuhuku Point, Marconi. have already seen this, but I'm going to overlay the development area, and this area in brown is that area that's zoned for development. And so here is that high resolution map of coral reefs zoomed into this area. Again, yellows, oranges, and reds are high coral cover, blues and greens are low. And so I want to mention that coral, let me take a step back. So I was a part of the development of this data set and the publication of this data set, and I had never really zoomed in on this area. And I will say this is the first time presenting or pulling together this presentation that I actually looked at this data set. And I was really quite surprised how much coral cover is in this area. And that's because you would never expect the North Shore of any of these islands to have a lot of coral. It's one of the harshest environments in the world for corals, and because it just gets so big every year. In fact, it's probably arguably has some of the highest wave forcing of any coral reef environment in the world. So there is quite extensive coral cover, not only in the shallows, but definitely in the deeper areas. And why am I focusing on coral? Well, coral, as I mentioned, has really an outsized influence in how ecosystems function. And so not only are they foundational organisms, so you can't really have a coral reef without corals, but also they provide really important habitat for juvenile fish and adult fish. And to make that point, this is a video that I took just swimming in Waimea Bay. So no one would suggest Waimea Bay has extensive coral cover, but there are these small patches of corals. And you can see just thousands of juvenile fish and other fish using that as habitat. So every year, these small fish are basically recruiting to this small little patch of reef and that reef is providing shelter from predation so they can grow and be the next cohort of fish that are important within the ecosystem or fish that maybe we fish or eat. So going back again to this map, and again, just showing in really detailed, high resolution where we can find corals. I'm now going to present some information that was in the environmental impact statement. And so I'm just going to go back and forth real fast. So here we go. So this is a map of, again, that's used in the SEIS. And what it shows is that entire area where we had high resolution coral data is basically shows that it's all turf algae. And so this data set is actually a NOAA product from almost 20 years ago now. And it's when I was actually in my master's, we used to use, not necessarily because we thought it was correct, but it would help us identify maybe where we would do in situ reef surveys, trying to find, say, a hard bottom as opposed to sand. So even being a NOAA employee, we knew that this wasn't very good. It was the best available. But it's terrible, as you can see. It totally misrepresents the coral reef in this area. To the credit of the authors of the SEIS, they actually did do surveys in each of the embayments in Kavela, in Turtle Bay, and Kuilima Bay. And I don't know if you can see, there's these red lines in each of these figures actually are from the SEIS. There's these little red lines. They represent 100-foot by about 2 feet surveys that the authors performed, or whoever they hired. And I don't know how to explain, to suggest that you can go out and do 3 surveys and try and characterize what's in this environment is the only sort of comparison I was trying to come up with that might be relevant here. It's as if all you ever surfed was chocolates. And chocolates was your wave, right? And you said that this is representing the North Shore. You know, I charge the North Shore. This is what I do. But chocolates is it. That's what this is. And to the credit, actually, of the authors, they do point out, and I quote, the benthic surveys were restricted to the nearshore waters and were not intended to characterize the coral reef environment. So in fact, that they never really even did a proper characterization of the reef in the SEIS. And even if they did, the information would be so outdated, it'd be irrelevant now. So I think that's a really important point to sort of make and take home. So I'm going to switch gears to talk about the Hawaiian green sea turtle. A couple of key points is that there are green sea turtles located across the world, but the population in Hawaii is isolated, geographically isolated, and genetically distinct. They are late producers. They have 25 to 35 years old by the time they're at sexual maturity. They have natal site fidelity. And what that means is they like to return to the place that they were born to nest. They were historically harvested, but in the late 1970s, they were protected under the Endangered Species Act. So here we have a heat map of adult sea turtle sightings in the most recent 10 years. Yellows represent more sea turtles, blues represent less. And really the point of this map is to show that sea turtles are using this entire area for habitat. More importantly though, is this video has to be one of the cutest things I've seen in a very long time, is that there has been nesting recently occurring in this area. And so these are baby sea turtles emerging from their nest and making their way to the ocean out at Kahuku Point. And looking at a map, we can see that there are hotspots in nesting. And in fact, just in the last 3 years, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has documented 26 nests in this area. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. One is sea turtles, because they like to return where they were born, over 90% of all sea turtles actually travel up to Lalo, which is in Papahanaumokuakea. It's over a 500-mile travel from Oahu. And the mean sea level, or the mean height above the sea level, is just 4 feet. So their population is highly vulnerable to sea level rise and climate change. And so anywhere they're increasing nesting is really important for the viability of the species. And really importantly, there was no documented nesting of sea turtles in the supplementally asked. So this is totally new information that absolutely should be included when we think about the impacts of development. So just a couple of, I'm now going to switch obviously to the Hawaiian monk seal. A couple of things, it is the only endemic marine mammal. There's only 2 endemic mammals, the Hawaiian monk seal and the Hawaiian bat. It's one of the most endangered seals globally. And the current population, there's about 1,600 animals. 1,200 are in Papahanaumokuakea and 400 are here in the main Hawaiian Islands. And just like I showed for the sea turtles, this is a heat map where lighter colors represent more. In this case, we're looking at adult sightings. So in the most recent 10 years, we've seen about 3,300 seals, or seal sightings, and that's 46 unique seals identified. And I just want to contrast that with what's in the SEIS. Basically, we've seen a 6-fold increase in sightings and about a 2.7-fold increase in unique seals identified in the area from the most recent 10 years compared to the 10 years in which the SEIS studied monk seal habitat usage. Here we have a heat map of pupping, so basically where baby seals are being born. Again, brighter colors represent where there's been more seals. And just like before, compared to the SEIS, we've seen a 4-fold increase in the number of pups in this area. So monk seals are heavily utilizing this area. They're using it for reproduction, and it's increased pretty substantially, pretty significantly since the information that was presented in the SEIS. So I'm not just going to highlight a couple of threats because there's really a lot of the threats are common among coral reefs and green sea turtles and monk seals. So coastal development for coral reefs, that has to do largely with land-based runoff, so toxins, pesticides, fertilizers, which are typically used when you're trying to manicure your lawn, especially in resort zone districts, sedimentation, wastewater. But for turtles and monk seals, it's largely habitat loss. Turtles, lighting is really important. So when a baby turtle emerges from its nest, artificial lighting will actually distract them and they'll go the wrong way. So they'll go to the bushes as opposed to the ocean. So that can be a really big deal. Fishing pressure and fishing interactions are all impactful for each of these organisms and ecosystems. Direct human impact for reefs, whether that's trampling. For monk seals, unfortunately, there's intentional killings. And climate change, of course, we have ocean warming, marine heat waves are increasing, which can really affect coral reefs. Coastal erosion and sea level rise and ocean acidification. Each of these things have various impacts on each of these organisms. And so speaking of sea level rise, I'm going to pivot now to sea level rise. And I will also say, I've said this a couple of times, as the thing keeps slowly dropping, sorry. Just yell at me if you can't hear me. Get right on the mic. Just get in there. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Lost the train of thought. Okay, sea level rise. So our information has fundamentally changed since in the last 10 years. And partly that's because a series of reports that the International Panel on Climate Change puts out and our climate models and our understanding of sea level rise and what drives it has changed. Here you're looking at the historical record from 1900 till present day in Honolulu. And so we've seen about 0.9 feet in sea level rise in about the last 120 years. But we know that sea level rise, what has happened in the past, is not reflective of what's going to happen in the future. And so the models vary, but we're likely to see, there's a couple of scenarios, which I've called the likely scenario versus the optimistic. And we're definitely currently tracking the more likely scenario. And so we're probably going to see between 0.5 foot and 1 foot of sea level rise just in the next 25 years. So it's 2050. 2050 sounds really far away to me, but 25 years is not. So, and then by 2100, we would expect between 2 and 4 feet. And so that's about 75 years away, which is certainly in the lifespan of my 2-year-old running around over here. And so there has been quite a lot of work by the University of Hawaii, the Pacific Integrated Ocean Observing System, or PACAIUS, as well as the state to try and understand sea level rise and its basically coastal inundation and how that's going to impact coastal infrastructure. So I'm going to just step through a series of model runs that basically show where sea level is expected to influence these areas as sea level rises. So if you can see it, this is a 0.5 foot of sea level rise. And all of the blue areas are where we would expect those areas to be impacted by, again, a 0.5 foot. And I'm just going to cycle through. Here we have 1.1 foot scenario. Here's the 2 foot scenario. And here's the 3.2 foot scenario. And my daughter Sayla really wants to be a part of this. So you can see there's like really large swaths of this dark blue. And if it doesn't make sense, the reason why you see areas inland that have blue is because basically you have sea level pushing up the water table, and you're basically gonna have sea level rise in the middle of in certain low-lying areas because of that. And so I just zoomed into the Arete development area where you can see the 0.5 foot, which is almost guaranteed by 2050. And then the 3.2 foot scenario, which is pretty certain by 2100. So I have a series of points just to end with. So our abilities to understand ecosystems in this area have just fundamentally changed, largely because of technological advances. And so we just know so much more about these areas. And so what that means also is that the status of these ecosystems are just completely different than what's represented in the SCIS. There's far more coral cover, there's far more green sea turtles, there's far more sea turtles nesting, and there's far more monk seals utilizing the area. Developing in this area will absolutely increase human pressures and will certainly negatively impact ecosystems in this area. I don't think there's any question about that. And finally, I'll just say that because we know so much more, and because, again, it is just so poorly characterized in the previous environmental impact statement that it's hard to imagine moving forward development without a new SEIS. And so that's like my personal opinion, but that's also my professional opinion. And so with that, mahalo for allowing me to speak to you tonight. Mahalo for the organizers inviting me, and thanks. And I'm here for more questions and I'll stick around if you guys want to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Jamie. And now we have the North Shore Land Trust, Adam and Tim, coming to speak with us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Borrello. I'm the Executive Director of the North Shore Community Land Trust. And Tim, our Director of Conservation, will be sharing some of the highlights of our Kalai'o Kaunoa project out at Kuku Point, our restoration and stewardship efforts out there. But I want to start similar to how Jessica did. The North Shore Community Land Trust was founded in 1997 by some forward-thinking and motivated and inspired community members, two of whom are in the audience, Denise Antolini and Larry McElhaney. We're founded with the mission to protect, steward, and enhance the natural landscapes, cultural heritage, and rural character of Ahapua'a from Kahuku to Kaena Point. And so since our founding in 1997, we've been driven by this notion that my predecessor, Doug Cole, liked to coin, which was dream big and big things happen. So along those lines, in our nearing, we're getting closer to 30 than 25 already. So we've been around for 27 years now. I first got involved after I was home from undergrad and I went to testify at Haleiwa Elementary School. And when I was done testifying, someone grabbed my arm and I turned to the side and it was Larry. And he said, "Hey, you got to meet my son and here's what you're going to do," you know. And so since that time, our organization, together with the support of the community, phenomenal partner organizations, has been successful in raising over $70 million to protect over 4,000 acres of land on the North Shore. So those applause are really for everyone that's been involved. The community drives what we do. We try to lead, allow the community to lead the conversation, both from a cultural, environmental, and same with our stewardship efforts. So I just want to highlight a few of the things that we've done, just so, for those of you that aren't familiar with our organization. You can connect certain things that have happened in the past to where we are today. So in 2006, we supported the conservation of Waimea Valley, and Blake McElhaney, our first executive director, was instrumental in spearheading some of that effort, which protected over 1,800 acres of Waimea Valley. Then we did our first major effort that we spearheaded was the Pupukea Pamalu, which a lot of you were right under it here now. Started with the preservation of approximately 1,200 acres, 1,144 to be precise, including a lot of the trails and recreational area around here. And then in 2015, the Turtle Bay Makai, which is a lot of the parcel that we're talking about today, 639 acres on the Makai side was protected in perpetuity. And then followed by the Turtle Bay Ag Land, which is 439 acres, also protected in perpetuity. And then more recently, we've been engaged in the dune restoration efforts at Paumalu or Sunset Beach. We've also recently been fortunate to avert what many thought might be less than inspired use of the land at Waiale'e, and secure a lease in order to restore and steward that land. Kavela Farhan, who's leading up that effort, is in the audience as well. And so this is what we do. We are a voluntary land trust. We work with willing landowners. We rely heavily on our partners. Both transactional, Trust for Public Land has been critically involved in all of our transactions. And the way we do this is it's built on mutual respect and trust, both with landowners, government, NGOs, and community volunteers, and the environment itself. One of the things that we like to point out is that after starting our restoration efforts out at Kalai'o Kaunoa or Kuku Point is that the best endorsement we could get is when the albatross started returning and nesting, because then nature is letting us know that what we're doing is working, and they're pleased with it. So I can't think of a better endorsement. So, and just to share, this year, and correct me, Tim, we're up to 32 nests. So I'd like to also make a shout out to Sheldon Plenovich, who's with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and is critically important and helps us a lot out at Kalau Kanoa. And then ultimately we do this, and the purpose for us being here, and appreciate the invitation by Leila and the crew at Keep Hawaii Pono, is that just to help everyone understand how we operate. So we rely heavily on certain funding sources at the local level, both at the state and city level. We rely on legacy land funding at the state level and clean water and land funding at the city. Both of these funds are dedicated and allocated for the purpose of setting aside and preserving land. So we try to identify opportunities, willing landowners, and conserve land wherever we can. And then at the federal level, oftentimes in this area, we access what's called compatible use or REPI funding, which oftentimes it was critical to this here. It could be critical to additional preservation out towards Kahuku, because where the Army has training areas, they do have funding available set aside to conserve land for more inspired purposes like cultural, recreational, and access. So, this is what we're about. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I just wanted to give a really brief overview, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim Tubashevsky, who's our Director of Conservation. He's going to talk about the specific things that we've been doing at Kalai'o Kauno'o, or Kuku Point, since we started our restoration and stewardship efforts there in 2015. So thank you very much, and appreciate your time.
Mahalo, Adam, and thank you everyone for inviting us tonight. I just wanted to quickly go over kind of what we've been doing since 2015. So to give you a little background, we've kind of already talked about a lot about the conservation easement that took place over Turtle Bay Resort. That kind of closed in 2015. I started with the organization in 2015, so I was part of kind of that process a little bit, but I was definitely new and learning a lot at the time. And some of our staff and board members thought it was a good idea to do a little sunrise ceremony out at the point after we kind of closed the deal, and just kind of a nice little ceremony. I'd never been out to this area before that. And we walked out there, and if I hope many of you have been out there before. It's a really beautiful area. If you haven't, I highly encourage it. And just was kind of blown away of like, wow, this is kind of a really beautiful intact coastline that, let's face it, on Oahu doesn't exist very much anymore, right? Like if you think about the overall Oahu, there's mostly houses or hotels along the majority of the coastline these days, right? So there's not a lot of places and spaces like this left. And I thought, this would be a great opportunity to do some restoration with the community and find ways to get the community connected to this place in a way. So I actually reached out to Miss Sheldon Plentovich over here. I didn't know her at the time. And was with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, found some grant funding, and we've kind of been on our way ever since. So I'll just pull up all the points here. So starting in 2015, we started inviting the community out to the area with monthly community work days. So we've been doing that every second Saturday of the month since 2015. Starting to all blur now. It's been a long time. But we've had a lot of great volunteers in that time. A lot of community members, a lot of faces I see here tonight have been out there, so I really appreciate your time and energy. Thank you for that. We've had local elementary school, Sunset Beach Elementary School, 3rd grade comes out every year. We also had the 6th grade science class come out the past couple of years doing some projects out there. Other high schools and elementary schools in the area also come out throughout the year. It's a great opportunity to see the albatross chicks and kind of learn about the coastal environment and get their hands a little dirty and get some real work, some education out in the field, which is really exciting. We've had a lot of really kind of monumental kind of moments in that time. I think we're up to 30,000 native plants we've outplanted on the site to date. And this is all grant funded, right? So we're finding funding to buy those plants and make those things happen. We've cleared about 18 acres of invasive species out of the The parcel is about a 35 to 39 acre parcel in total. So we've got a little less than half cleared of invasive trees and shrubs and bushes. And we've probably like pretty well outplanted about 8 to 9 acres, where it's pretty much predominant native species at this point. In 2017, we had our first albatross chick nest show up. It was kind of a really unique experience. We cleared a small area in October. Nesting season is from November to July, so the moms kind of show up right around Thanksgiving to start laying their egg. We cleared an area in October, and that November, in the very area we cleared, we had our first albatross nest, which was pretty cool. So we thought we might be onto something there. And as has been mentioned a few times now, we're now up to 32 nests this season. So the population is growing, thanks to the efforts of a lot of the community groups that have come out and helped clear the area. They really need that big, wide open space, right? If you guys have ever seen them in the air, they're really graceful at flying, but they're really bad at landing. So they need kind of a nice big runway. They're kind of clumsy on the takeoff and the landing part. So the big open spaces really helps them out. Also been fortunate enough to work with Deal and our DOFA staff, getting some really rare plants out there in the past couple of years. They've kind of highlighted this area as a great spot to kind of take what are called PEP species, which are basically plants that are close to extinct out in the wild at this point. And where they find the few populations left, they'll take either seeds or cuttings, they'll grow them in the nurseries, and they'll find other places on the island to kind of spread the population out, and hopefully they'll survive longer. So our site is one of those sites. So we have several different PEP plants that we're outplanting with the help of DOFA staff throughout the year as well. And then, as mentioned, the sea turtles, just a few years ago, there were pretty much 0 nests out in the site. And now I think we had 20 nests or so in the area this past nesting season. You got to see the adorable video just earlier. I've had been fortunate to be out there when we've done some of those nest excavations. It is really pretty magical experience. It's pretty cool to see all that out there. So, this place has come a long way from basically, while it was a beautiful area, it did have a lot of invasives, it did have a lot of issues, but over the time with a lot of community help, it's really come a long way. Yeah. And so what's the future of this area? So, we continue to have mostly monthly work days. We're really fortunate to be partnering with the current hotel owners in the sense that they're open to putting in a predator-proof fence along this area. So we could potentially have the area fenced off in the future to allow not just lace and albatross, but other seabirds nest in the area, such as shearwaters, bone-and petrels, that are also ground nesting seabirds. Right now, we just have, there's too many feral cats and rats and mice and mongoose out in the area that those nests aren't going to survive at the moment without a fence. So, we're hoping to do that in the near future. We're also, hoping to basically remove all the invasives in the entire area and outplant natives to have it really a beautiful site that future generations can come to and see what an intact coastal strand ecosystem can look like for future generations. So I like to kind of always say this to a lot of our groups that come out there. There's a term called a shifting baseline, which is an ecological term that is each generation has a different concept of what normal is in their area. So if you're a fisherman and your grandfather takes you to a certain fishing hole every year, what he found to be normal in that area as far as size of fish, frequency of fish, type of fish that he was catching may not be what is normal for your generation or future generations, as the number of the large ones may not be there anymore. There's less of them due to various reasons. So that's what's the concept of shifting baseline is, right? It's that as each generation comes along, the idea of what is normal in your surroundings is probably not necessarily what was normal a generation ago, right? So what we're hoping to do in this area is really press the pause button on that and provide what would have been normal, hundreds of years ago, to what coastline would have looked like, and have future generations get to experience that. So that's really our overall goal out there. And yeah, we hope you come out and check it out if you haven't been out there, and join us on a work day if you'd like to in the future. So yeah, thank you. If you have any questions about it, I'll be here at the end.
Thank you, Adam and Tim. I wanted to introduce Jessie King. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for putting this on. This means a lot. I think the community is going to benefit from it. Very educational. My name is Jessie King, lifetime resident, North Shore, born and raised. I work for the city and county ocean safety. I just want to emphasize what I say. I'm not speaking on behalf of Honolulu Ocean Safety Department. I am a lifeguard, but what I say is my opinion through the lens of a lifeguard. But I'm not speaking for the city or the department. So, there's countless watermen here that are way more qualified than me and more knowledge than me to say the things I'm going to say. I'm not saying anything enlightening that most of you probably don't already know, but I worked with the group and, decided to come up and share a few things. Let's see here. So there's common terminology that ocean safety uses, and it's people plus hazards equal risk. So the more people you have in a hazardous area, the more risk there's going to be, meaning there's going to be more problems, more emergencies. And as you guys know, the North Shore is exposed to surf, dangerous currents, hazardous conditions 9 months out of the year for most of the coastline. But what's interesting about the Kuilima area is that stretch is exposed to hazardous conditions 12 months out of the year. So while we get a break in most of the beaches on this side, during the summertime, over there's not really any breaks. There's always hazardous conditions over there. The windward side of the island, there's always energy compared to what we have over here, even if it's flat. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that as a lifeguard, not speaking on behalf of the department, but as a lifeguard, we do have a lot of emergencies in that area. And part of the reason for that is because there's a lot of people there with hazardous conditions, right? So if they have a development to expand that area, it's going to compound that problem. We're going to have more emergencies guaranteed just because there's more people. And the area that's already developed is way more user-friendly in terms of the beach and accessibility in the water, right? And the area where they want to build is not nearly as accessible. And as a lifeguard, we're always looking at, if we play scenarios out in our heads of areas, if something's going to happen here, where's our entry? Where's our exits? What's the safest way to retrieve a patient? And where's the safest place to bring them in? And the area where they're proposing to develop it's not a good scenario. It's a terrible spot for that. And if they develop there's going to be inevitably people that aren't water savvy that are going to be trying to dive, swim, surf, fish, and it's a bad place to be. And let's see here. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of all I have to say. Is a development there is bad for not just the community on so many different levels, but it's bad for public safety because it's an extremely hazardous area. It's not user-friendly. It's beautiful, but it's not user-friendly. It's setting up emergency services for all sorts of problems that we don't need to have. They're creating a problem by developing something there, which is what should be a huge concern for everybody, is public safety. So, yeah, and we don't have the resources. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and don't forget to check out the t-shirt booth.
Yeah, we just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We hope that provided you all with a little bit more information. And if you have any questions, we don't have time for questions and comments tonight, but if you want to write anything down on the note cards back at our resources table, make sure you pick up that issue of Pamalu Press, and we will be sure to reply to any questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you, guys.